You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
It's McGuire Mondays with Pierre and Dan, and it's St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day, Pierre McGuire.
From an O'Toole to a McGuire, thank you very much, Dano. That means a lot to me and to the rest of our Irish brethren.
You know, it's funny how life goes. On this day, my brother Vince and I would book it off work and just go to bars all day long. That seems like 3 lifetimes ago. As that was back in the drinking days. I don't miss that. I don't miss that at all.
My breakthrough St. Patrick's Day was when I was 15 or 16. My father said, "We'll see how tough you are." And we went outside and had a little set to, and I still had some growing to do.
So hopefully everyone's having a good day. The Toronto Maple Leafs, currently I think they're excited to be done with March, and we're only halfway through because they're into the March doldrums.
Well, the Ides of March are definitely upon them. There's no question about that, Dan. And when you think about it, they still have another trip out west, so they're changing time zones again. If you look at the last 6 or 7 games, it hasn't been very friendly for them outside of a game in Utah, which they won in a shootout. Mitchell Marner working some magic. But there's one fundamental flaw in their game right now, and I saw it on Saturday night, and I saw it earlier last week too, and it's continuing to grow, Dan, and that is their in-zone coverage is solid down low. It is. But what they're doing to create that solid down low coverage, they're giving up tons of point opportunities for the opposition. And I'll give you a case in point. Against the Senators, I think the Senators had 23 or 24 shots. I know for a fact that 8 of those shots were from defensemen. And 4 was one defenseman, Jake Sanderson, who also scored a goal. So while they're trying to protect the house down low, which is great and admirable, they're stretched out too much in their own zone and they're giving up way too many point shots. And this is a coaching adjustment that has to happen because the opponents are seeing that and they're putting pucks back to the point and drilling them on net. And it's creating mayhem down low for Toronto.
If anyone hasn't realized what the Ottawa Senators are doing this season, I think they've got people's attention now.
Well, they definitely do, Dan. You're so spot on. And I think the biggest thing is new coaching message. That's not a knock on DJ Smith or Jack Capuano or Davis Payne, the former coaching staff. It's just they'd been there a while. They hadn't had a lot of success because they were a rebuilding team. Usually the guy that inherits the rebuild on the last couple of years, that's the guy that does well. And Travis and his staff have benefited from the hard work of that last coaching staff. And I think they've made some subtle little additions too. I know Josh Norris, it wasn't popular amongst the players for him to be traded out of there. But if you look at the way the team has ascended since the trade deadline, it's pretty relatively easy to see that they needed to change a little bit of the complexion of the dressing room as well. And I think they've done that.
And they just look like a team that's got fire in their belly, and compare that to the Leafs, who just are struggling to figure things out. Just start back in net. Remember when the Leafs goaltending tandem was top 10 in the league? Now the Leafs goaltenders are not being talked about in a good way at all.
I think they've hit a bit of a wall. I think part of that is what we talked about before, the in-zone coverage. I think another part of that, Dan, is that there is a fatigue factor that sets in. Remember, Stolarz was injured too. He's been battling back from an injury. So I think that's part of it. I'm not trying to make excuses for these guys. I'm just trying to tell you how it usually plays out over 82 games. But Dan, to me, the Leafs are still a fundamentally strong team. They're still a team that's in a very good playoff position. It would benefit them to get out of the 2-3 hole and get into the 1 hole. Whether they can do that or not, I don't know. I know they have 2 games left with Florida. But I watched their team play, and I think these are just minor little tweaks that the coaches have to make in order to get this team to the next level at this stage of the season.
So if you're a coaching staff, do you see them switching things up, implementing new game plans? Like we always talk about how it's broken down into segments, the season. Do they break it down into the smaller segments? Do they handle it game by game? How does Craig Berube and his staff, do they switch things up, or do you just stick with what they've done all season so far?
I think it's practice to practice. I always found when you were able to make adjustments, it wasn't for long practices. And you don't want your team practicing for long periods of time at this stage of the season, but it's just practice to practice. Implement your organizational philosophy. We want to be better with our in-zone coverage. We want to be better with our transition offense. We want to be better with our transition defense. We want to be better in the forecheck. Whatever you decide as a staff you want to be better at, implement that into your practice plan 7 to 15 minutes a day. Be off the ice in 25 to 30 minutes. That's all your guys need. And if they do that and you also compound that learning on the ice with video and a little bit of chalk talk, your team will be better. Your team will be fine.
The elephant in the room is Auston Matthews. He's missed significant time this season, so that's why his goal totals are down. But even when he's playing, his goal totals aren't where we expect Auston Matthews' goal totals to be. What is going on with Auston Matthews?
Yeah, no, I think he's missing a gear, Dan. I don't think you're being mean either. It's very apparent. He's not shooting the puck as well. He's not distributing the puck as well. When he's on his game, he forces a lot of turnovers, and he's tremendously resilient in his own zone. We're not seeing that as much either. So I think there's an injury problem there. I don't think he's been right for a while. I didn't think he was right at the Four Nations, and I was at all those games. So I don't know if it's just mental fatigue, physical fatigue, or there's a physical problem. But to me, it looks like he's playing with a lingering injury. Whatever that might be, I don't know.
And they're at the point of the season now, if they look at what his injury could be that he's missed time with, they're probably looking saying, well, we can't have him out of the lineup for that length of time again. So it's an odd situation because we don't know what the hell he was even gone for.
Great point. I know he spent some time in Germany, as you know as well, with a doctor over there. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. And I know the Leafs are taking it on the chin right now, not only in the standings and on the schedule, but also from their fans. But I think they did some good things at the trade deadline. Brandon Carlo is a really good player for them. And I know people want more offense. That's not his game. You got to know what you purchased. You purchased a shutdown guy that's going to help you in the playoffs. I know Scott Lawton hasn't played like a legitimate true number 3 center. He's never been traded before in his career. There is an adjustment period. He got hurt the other day. High stick to the face, probably got some stitches around his eye, but he'll be back. He's a tough kid. I think they did some really good things. I still think on paper they're a very formidable force. How long this lasts, I don't know, because in the offseason, no matter what, you're going to have a Mitchell Marner situation. Whether he signs or doesn't sign, you're going to have to deal with that. But to beat these guys up day in and day out, I don't think it's really – it doesn't matter what's fair. I don't think it's appropriate. How about that?
When we had Kelly Rudy on a week and a half ago, I let him know that the last time every Canadian team made the postseason was 1986. So I'm keeping a constant look at because I said there is a chance that it might happen this year. There's an outside chance because every Canadian team is right there. As of right now, on March 17th, the Canadians are a point out in the East, and the Calgary Flames are flip-flopping, seems to be every night with the Vancouver Canucks. So we only have 2 Canadian teams outside the playoff picture as it stands right now. That is phenomenal.
And Monday night's a huge game, Calgary at Toronto. Huge game, Calgary at Toronto. So that's number one. Number two, Dan, you probably have it in front of you. I don't. If you look at the Montreal Canadiens schedule, the rest of the way, especially in this month, there's one situation where the Canadians play, I think it's 5 games in 6.5 days or 5 games in 7 days. It's that tight. That's going to be the hellacious part of their schedule, and it's coming up at the end of March. And you probably are looking at it now. I
am looking at it. So they play the Blues on a Tuesday, then the Flyers on Thursday, Hurricanes on a Friday, Panthers on Sunday. Yeah. And they also have the Senators that's coming up tomorrow night.
Yeah, so people don't realize, I know, look, you got to work. You got to take care of family. Get all that. This is what I do for a living. And so I look at all these team schedules. And that's one of the things that's being vastly underreported. The Montreal Canadiens, they look so good right now. They are playing with house money. That being said, look at their schedule. If they get through that part of the schedule, Dan, in good shape, I think they can make the playoffs. But that's a big ask. That's a huge ask.
With just over a dozen games left, what were you, like 17 games left for each team?
Depending, 16
yeah.
or 17, yeah.
You've been around teams, I'm sure, where you're at this point of the schedule where every single night is must win. And that's the situation for the Senators, the Canadiens, the Canucks, and the Flames. Is it fun? Is it fun? Or is it just like, I can't take this stress. I can't do this night in and night out. But it must make it interesting coming to the rink because you know what's on the line.
Well, I think it's great. And I think the people that have done well with it think it's great as well. Here's the one thing I do know. When you have to go through stretches like that, and if you're fortunate enough to overcome them, when you get to the playoffs, whether you're the 8 seed playing the 1 seed or you're the 7 seed playing the 2 seed, however it might work out, you're better prepared for playoff hockey than that other team is. That's what I can tell you. And that matters. And you got to sell your players. If you're coaching or managing that team, you got to sell your players in that day in and day out. This is all part of us getting ready to go on a long run in the playoffs. Our playoffs have started. So let's make this fun. Your crowd gets into it. Wherever you go on the road, the media's into it. It's an exciting time to be around your dressing room. It really is.
But compared to being on a roller coaster, so you go up the steep hill, and then you start going down. It must be for these teams at a point where you're like, do we ever stop going down this big hill? There's no let up. Because me personally, I want a little break. That's not possible.
So remember what we talked about before with practice? One of the hardest things for players at this time of the year is to go into the rink day in and day out and put their equipment on, even if they're not playing games. So you got to manage their minutes. You got to make sure it's fresh every day. You got to do different things to motivate your guys. And your internal leadership's got to do the same thing. And I don't mean the coaches or the assistant coaches. I mean your captains, your senior leadership, your young guys, whomever it might be that's the fun guy around the team. You got to make it a great workplace environment. And the way you do that is by creating new stuff all the time. You know, I worked with the winningest coach in the history of the sport, Scotty Bowman. And Dan, he coached in 5 decades. And every day that we went to the rink, there was something new and something different. Every day. Now, he didn't always tell the players what it was, but he would pass it on to the assistants or to the captains to do it. But every day.
What are we talking about? Like, what new? Would he have like cupcakes in the room, or is he just changing a drill?
Drills, messaging. You know, he'd come into the room and say to the players, who are our next 5 opponents? And so if you didn't know the answer, you were going to be embarrassed in front of your peers. So it stimulated thought process. Guys would come into I know who our next 5 opponents are. Or, you know, can you tell me who the captain is of our 3rd opponent in 5 days? You know, things like that. And so he made it fun. Even though you can read books where it says he was a tyrant and he was this and he was that, he made coming to the rink an experience. Some guys liked it, some guys didn't, but it was always an experience. It was always fresh.
But if he asked me who my next 5 opponents are, I'd say, I know who we're playing next because that's all I'm focused on. Is that not the right answer? It
can be, but he was asking you about your next 5. He didn't ask you if it's a game plan. So that's what I'm saying. There was little things like that would stimulate the room. You know, I remember we were in a playoff series once, just to give you another example. And we were down 3-1 in the playoff series, the Washington Capitals. And he said, we got to change our system. So we did. And he said, none of you, talking to the assistant coaches, are going in that room tomorrow. Mario Lemieux is going to deliver the game plan. So we brought Mario up to Scotty's suite and showed him exactly how we were going to play Game 5 in Washington and Landover against the Capitals. And we changed our whole neutral zone. I'm telling you, in about 5 hours, we changed our entire neutral zone. The neutral zone we played the entire season that won us a cup the year before, we changed it in 5 hours. And instead of us presenting it to the players, Mario did. We never looked back, Dan. We won the cup again.
I'm glad you mentioned Mario because I haven't talked to you since I talked to Eric Lindros on here, and we talked about the pass that he let go between his skates in Salt Lake City. And Eric said the joke among the team was we told him, you didn't even see that. So I didn't know that was the joke among those players. We're like, you didn't even see that puck. But I think they were just, chiding him a little. Yeah.
Yeah, I was working with our good friends Bob McKenzie and Gordon Miller, Dano, in that situation in Salt Lake City. I'll never forget it. And having had the privilege of working with Mario and still working with him at his fantasy camps and spending time with him, he knew exactly what he's doing. And Paul Correa was a beneficiary of an unbelievable play by Mario Lemieux, I can tell you that.
Yeah. It was good to talk to Eric. He was very upfront about what happened in Quebec in Quebec City, because he's like, that's why I had my back against the wall. Cause I'm saying, you're so relaxed now. You're so at ease when you were a player. When you were in front of a microphone, it looked like you wanted to run away. And he's like, because I was thrown into it and I had my back against the wall my entire career. Like these guys, they want something from me that I don't want to give them because they don't know the real story. Now he can tell the real story that he didn't want to go to Quebec because of their GM.
Yeah. Well, that part, I'm going to take you at your word and Eric at his word, but here's what I can tell you. I watched Eric Lindros play for St. Michael's before he went to the Oshawa Generals. And I had the privilege of watching Bobby Orr play on tape as a junior. I watched Mary Lemieux play live. I saw Mike Bossy play live. I saw a lot of great junior players over the course of my career and life. I've never seen a man dominate major junior, not Sidney Crosby, not Nathan McKinnon, not Connor McDavid. I've never seen a man at that age, at his age, his draft year, dominate other players physically like Eric did. Never. Never.
I said that to him. I said, when he came to town to Peterborough with the Generals, it would sell out. I said, how did that feel? And he said, well, we had pretty good teams. I'm like, what are you talking about? Everyone came to see you.
Yeah, no, well, they did have pretty good teams, but he was the man. And, it's funny. I think if it would have been the same rules as we have now between college and major junior, where you can play major junior, now play U.S. college hockey. I know Eric was probably one of the most heavily recruited players at that time. It was unbelievable how many people. We were one of them when I was coaching at St. Lawrence. And I know Michigan was on Eric hard. I know Michigan State was on him hard. There had to be so many different places he could have gone, and he chose to stay in the Ontario Hockey League. And you think about those times, Dan, there were, I know Mario saved hockey in Pittsburgh and Sid piggybacked on that and saved it again. I think Eric did a lot to help growth of the Ontario Hockey League. And that was right in the prime of my coaching career as a college coach. Colleges were starting to take over. You got to remember, Neuendijk didn't play junior. He played at Cornell. And Correa didn't play junior hockey. He went to University of Maine. You start looking at all the guys that were leaving. Jonathan Taves went and played at University of North Dakota. Like, you go look at the names that had left. I think Lindros did an amazing job staying in the Ontario Hockey League and really helped growing the league. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that. I don't.
Oh, yeah. He sold a lot of tickets. Pierre, I got to go join the parade down Main Street. It's just me. But, hey, any person can be in a parade if you just think you're in a parade walking down the street.
I'm so happy to visit with Mr. O'Toole from Ireland. Go get to Mr. O'Toole.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.